Staff Sergeant Hadley Mitchell had been moving through the fog-shrouded mountains for 6 hours, tracking enemy movements while the SEAL team 1,000 meters below her prepared for their assault. At 29 years old, with shoulder-length dark brown hair, usually hidden under a tactical cap and hazel eyes that missed nothing, she'd learned that being invisible was her greatest tactical advantage. The SEALs didn't even know she was in the area. Her mission was independent surveillance, operating alone in terrain where most soldiers wouldn't dare venture. But when the radio crackled with panicked voices, "Contact! Multiple enemy shooters on the ridgeline. Estimate 2,000 meters or more. We can't even see them." Hadley knew her surveillance mission was about to become something entirely different. She heard the SEAL team leader's frustrated whisper to his second-in-command. "Enemies at 2,000 meters. That's beyond our capability. We need specialized support, but there's no time." That's when Hadley emerged from the fog bank that had concealed her position, her custom-built .338 Lapua Magnum rifle slung across her back, and walked directly toward the stunned SEAL operators. One of them started to challenge her presence, but Hadley simply grabbed her sniper rifle, dropped into a shooting position, and said 4 words that would change the entire operation. "I've got the distance." The mission had started 72 hours earlier, when intelligence identified a high-value enemy commander meeting with foreign fighters in a remote mountain compound. The SEAL team's job was to conduct reconnaissance, confirm the target's presence, and if possible, execute a direct action raid. Hadley's job had been different. Inserted alone via high-altitude parachute drop, she was tasked with providing advanced surveillance from elevated positions the SEALs couldn't safely reach. She operated independently, moving through terrain at elevations above 8,000 feet, observing enemy movements and reporting intelligence. For 3 days, she'd been a ghost in the mountains. She'd watched enemy patrols, mapped their routes, identified their defensive positions. She'd survived on cold rations and minimal water, sleeping in carefully concealed hides that prevented detection. The SEALs didn't know she existed. Her mission was compartmented. Only the colonel commanding the operation knew there was an independent sniper operating in the area. To everyone else, she was just another piece of classified intelligence-gathering capability. But now, emerging from the fog that had concealed her mountain position, Hadley was about to reveal herself to the 12 surprised SEAL operators who were taking cover behind rocks while enemy fire impacted around their position. Lieutenant Jake Morrison, the SEAL team leader, looked at the woman who'd just appeared from nowhere like some kind of mountain spirit. "Who the hell are you, and how did you get here?" Hadley was already setting up her rifle on a stable rock formation, her movements professional and economical. "Staff Sergeant Hadley Mitchell, independent surveillance element. I've been in these mountains for 3 days. Now I'm your counter-sniper support. Where are the enemy shooters?" "Counter-sniper support? We didn't request. Lieutenant, you've got enemy snipers engaging your team from approximately 2,000 meters. I heard your radio transmission. You need someone who can shoot at that distance. That's what I do. Now where are they?" Morrison's second-in-command, Chief Petty Officer Ryan Carter, pointed toward the northern ridgeline barely visible through the shifting fog. "Northern ridge, elevation above us. We've been taking accurate fire, but can't identify exact positions. They're hitting us from way beyond our rifle range." Hadley pulled out her rangefinder and began scanning the northern ridgeline. "How many shooters?" "At least 3, maybe more. They've been firing sporadically for the past 10 minutes. One of my guys took a round through his plate carrier. Didn't penetrate, but he's bruised bad." "Have they been repositioning between shots?" "Hard to tell. Fog's been rolling in and out, but yeah, seems like they shoot and move." Hadley ranged various points on the northern ridgeline: 1,950 meters, 2,020 meters, 2,100 meters. The fog was complicating things, reducing visibility to intermittent windows when the wind shifted. "Lieutenant, I need your team to stay in hard cover for the next 15 minutes. No movement, no return fire. Let them think you're pinned and waiting for help. That'll make them confident, maybe less careful about exposure." Morrison studied her. Mid-20s to early 30s, fit but not bulky, calm in a way that suggested this wasn't her first time under fire. The rifle she was setting up was clearly custom-built, high-end optics, the setup of someone who took long-range shooting seriously. "Sergeant, with all respect, who authorized you to be here?" "Colonel Richards at Task Force Headquarters. My mission is compartmented. You weren't briefed on my presence because I'm supposed to be invisible, but circumstances changed when your team came under fire from extreme range. Now I'm your best option for dealing with that problem." Carter spoke up. "Ma'am, no disrespect, but those enemy snipers are at 2,000 meters or more. That's beyond effective range for most shooters. What makes you think you can engage at that distance?" Hadley finished her rifle setup and looked at Carter with hazel eyes that held absolute confidence. "Chief, my longest confirmed kill is 2,450 meters. I'm certified for extreme long-range interdiction. 2,000 meters is well within my capability. Now, let me do my job." She returned to her scope, scanning the northern ridgeline with methodical precision. The fog was her enemy. Every time it rolled in, visibility dropped to less than 500 meters. But when the wind shifted and cleared the fog temporarily, she could see the terrain features where enemy snipers would position. For 8 minutes, nothing happened. The SEAL team stayed in cover, watching this mysterious sniper who'd appeared from nowhere. Some were skeptical, others hopeful, all confused about who she was and how she'd gotten here. Then Hadley saw it. A brief break in the fog revealed a figure on the northern ridgeline, partially concealed behind rocks at approximately 2,050 meters. The enemy sniper was setting up for another shot, confident that the fog concealed him. "I have visual on one shooter," Hadley said quietly. "Northern ridgeline, 2,050 meters. Stand by." She ranged the target precisely, 2,047 meters. She pulled out her handheld weather station and checked conditions. Wind 12 miles per hour from the northwest. Temperature 52 degrees Fahrenheit. Elevation 8,300 feet. Humidity 75%. Hadley input the data into her ballistic calculator, getting her firing solution. 41.8 MOA elevation adjustment, 7.6 MOA windage correction. At this distance, her bullet would be in flight for approximately 3.1 seconds. She made her scope adjustments and settled into perfect shooting position. Through the scope, the enemy sniper was a small figure, barely recognizable as human at over 1.2 miles distance. Hadley controlled her breathing, finding the natural respiratory pause. Her finger took up trigger slack. She held the crosshairs on target with the calculated holdover for bullet drop and wind drift. The rifle fired. The recoil was substantial, but Hadley wrote it perfectly, staying in the scope to observe impact. 3.1 seconds of bullet flight. Through her scope, she saw the enemy sniper collapse. "Hit," she said calmly. "Target down at 2,047 meters." The SEALs who'd been watching through binoculars and rifle optics stared in stunned silence. They'd just watched someone make a shot most of them considered impossible. Morrison found his voice first. "Confirmed. Enemy sniper is down. Holy shit, you actually hit him from over a mile away." "That's one," Hadley said, working the bolt and chambering a fresh round. "You said at least 3 shooters. I'm scanning for the others." She continued observing the northern ridgeline. The fog was rolling back in, obscuring visibility. But she'd learned to read terrain during her 3 days in these mountains. She knew where the good shooting positions were. 4 minutes later, another fog break revealed a second enemy sniper, this one at 2,120 meters, positioned further west along the ridgeline. Second target acquired, 2,120 meters. She ran her calculations, adjusted for the greater distance and slightly different wind angle, and fired. 3.2 seconds later, the second enemy sniper dropped. "2 down," Hadley reported, scanning for additional threats. Chief Carter was now looking at her with something approaching awe. "Sergeant, those were the 2 best shots I've ever seen. You're making 2,000-plus meter kills look routine." "At these distances, it's just math, Chief. Measure the variables accurately, calculate correctly, execute the fundamentals. The distance is just another variable to account for." Morrison keyed his radio. "Griffin 6 to T-Oak, be advised we have counter-sniper support on station. 2 enemy snipers neutralized at extreme range, continuing mission." The SEAL team began moving again, advancing toward their objective, the compound where the enemy commander was believed to be located. Hadley moved with them, staying slightly elevated to maintain overwatch capability. As they advanced, Morrison fell back to move alongside her. "Sergeant, I need to know what your capabilities are. Are you just here for counter-sniper work, or can you provide ongoing support?" "I can provide whatever support you need, Lieutenant. Counter-sniper is my specialty, but I'm qualified for all aspects of precision fire. If you need precision engagement at any distance up to 2,500 meters, I can deliver." "What about closer ranges? If we hit resistance at 500 to 800 meters?" "I'm trained on all engagement distances. My rifle is optimized for extreme range, but I can make shots at any distance. Just tell me what you need eliminated, and give me good sight lines." They continued moving through the mountainous terrain. The fog was still rolling in and out, sometimes providing concealment, sometimes exposing them on open slopes. 20 minutes later, the team reached an observation point overlooking the compound. Morrison glassed the target through binoculars while Hadley scanned with her rifle scope. The compound was in a valley approximately 1,400 meters from their position. She could see multiple buildings, defensive walls, and at least 15 to 20 enemy fighters visible in various locations. "I count approximately 20 hostiles," Morrison said. "They're not on high alert, probably don't know we're here yet. The question is how we approach without getting detected." Hadley was studying the compound's defenses through her scope. "Lieutenant, I see 3 positions that concern me. There's a guard tower at the northeast corner with at least 1 sentry. There's a machine gun position on the main building's roof. And there's what looks like a fighting position on the western wall with multiple personnel. Can you engage those positions from here?" "Affirmative. Range is 1,400 to 1,500 meters, depending on specific target. Well within my capability. But once I start shooting, the compound will know they're under attack." Morrison considered tactics. "If you can eliminate those 3 key positions rapidly, tower, machine gun, western fighting position, my team can move in during the confusion. How fast can you engage all 3? "Give me 2 minutes to pre-range all 3 positions and calculate firing solutions. Then, I can engage all 3 in under 60 seconds if you need speed." "Do it. When you finish the 3rd shot, we'll begin our assault." Hadley spent the next 2 minutes in careful preparation. She ranged each target position precisely. Guard tower at 1,437 meters, machine gun position at 1,485 meters, western fighting position at 1,392 meters. She calculated ballistic solutions for all 3, accounting for the slightly different ranges and angles. She mentally mapped the sequence: tower first to eliminate observation, machine gun second to remove the heavy weapon, fighting position third because it would take longest for those fighters to react. "Ready," she said. "On your signal, I'll engage all 3 positions in sequence. Estimate 50 seconds from first shot to 3rd shot." Morrison positioned his team for the assault. "Execute when ready." Hadley settled into position, placed her crosshairs on the guard tower sentry with proper holdover, and fired. The sentry in the tower dropped. She worked the bolt smoothly, swung her rifle to the machine gun position, and fired again. The machine gunner collapsed across his weapon. She worked the bolt, shifted to the western fighting position where multiple enemy fighters were visible, selected the most exposed target, and fired. The 3rd shot hit, sending the enemy fighter tumbling backward. "All 3 positions engaged," Hadley reported. "Tower clear, machine gun neutralized, western position disrupted. Griffin 6, move, move, move." Morrison led his team down the slope toward the compound at a sprint. Hadley stayed in overwatch position, scanning for threats. Through her scope, she watched the SEAL team approach the compound while enemy fighters inside were still confused about what was happening. An enemy fighter appeared on the main building's roof, rifle raised, aiming toward the approaching SEALs. Range, 1,450 meters. Hadley engaged. The enemy fighter dropped before he could fire. Another enemy fighter emerged from a building, trying to reach the now unmanned machine gun. Range, 1,470 meters. Hadley engaged. Target down. She was providing precision overwatch, eliminating threats before they could engage the SEAL team. At these ranges, the enemy fighters had no idea where the shots were coming from. They simply saw their teammates collapsing from invisible fire. The SEAL team breached the compound wall and began room-to-room clearing. Hadley continued scanning, looking for threats. She saw movement on a rooftop approximately 200 meters from the SEAL position. An enemy fighter with what looked like an RPG launcher, positioning to fire at the Americans. Range: 1,630 meters from Hadley's position. She ranged, calculated, and fired in under 5 seconds. The enemy fighter with the RPG collapsed before he could launch. "Griffin 6, this is Overwatch," Hadley transmitted. "I just eliminated an RPG gunner on the northern building rooftop. You had a rocket about to come your way." "Overwatch, Griffin 6, good shooting. We're continuing clearance." For the next 15 minutes, Hadley provided precision overwatch while the SEAL team cleared the compound. She eliminated 7 enemy fighters who threatened the team, all at ranges between 1,400 and 1,700 meters. Finally, Morrison's voice came over the radio. "Overwatch, Griffin 6. Compound secure. HVT is confirmed KIA. He was eliminated during the breach. We're conducting sensitive site exploitation, and then we'll be ready for exfil." "Roger, Griffin 6. I'll maintain Overwatch until you're ready to move." 20 minutes later, the SEAL team withdrew from the compound, carrying intelligence materials and documentation. Hadley displaced from her position and moved to link up with them at the planned extraction point. When she reached the extraction point, Morrison approached her with an expression of profound respect. "Sergeant Mitchell, I counted 11 enemy killed by your fire during that operation. Every single one of those shots prevented a threat to my team. You saved multiple lives today." "Just doing my job, Lieutenant." "Your job? Most snipers can't shoot like that. Where did you train?" "Special Operations Sniper Course, then advanced long-range training at a facility I can't discuss. I've been doing extreme distance work for about 4 years. Chief Carter joined them. "Ma'am, Sergeant, I've worked with a lot of snipers in my career. What you did today, the shooting at 2,000 plus meters, and then the sustained precision fire during our assault, that's the best shooting I've ever witnessed," Morrison nodded. "I'm writing a commendation for your actions. But I also have questions. You said you've been in these mountains for 3 days, alone." "Affirmative. I inserted via Hayho parachute drop 72 hours ago. I've been conducting surveillance from elevated positions, mapping enemy movements." "You've been operating solo at 8,000 plus feet in hostile territory for 3 days? That's incredibly dangerous." Hadley smiled slightly. "Solo operations are my specialty, Lieutenant. I prefer working alone. No one to compromise my position, no one to slow me down. Complete freedom to move through terrain most people can't access." "But what about resupply? Support? Extraction if things go wrong?" "I carry everything I need. Water purification, cold rations, cold weather gear, emergency medical. As for extraction if things go wrong, I'd handle it the same way I handle everything else. Carefully, quietly, and alone." The extraction helicopters arrived, pulling the SEAL team and Hadley out of the area. During the flight back to base, several of the SEALs approached her with questions about her shooting, her training, her equipment. She answered professionally, but didn't volunteer much. She learned that maintaining some mystery was tactically useful. Let people wonder. Let them speculate. It kept them from assuming they fully understood her capabilities. When they landed at the forward operating base, Hadley was met by Colonel Richards, the task force commander who'd authorized her insertion. "Sergeant Mitchell, I've been monitoring the operation. Your shooting was exceptional. 11 confirmed kills at ranges from 1,400 to 2,100 meters, including critical saves that prevented SEAL casualties. Outstanding work." "Thank you, sir. I'm also hearing that you emerged from the fog like some kind of ghost, took charge of the counter-sniper situation, and made shots that SEAL team members are calling the best they've ever seen. You've certainly made an impression." "Sir, I prefer to avoid making impressions. I work better when people don't know I'm there," Richard smiled. "I understand, but after today, the special operations community is going to know about you. The word is already spreading about the sniper who appeared from nowhere and made impossible shots look routine. Over the next 2 weeks, Hadley supported 3 more SEAL operations, each time operating from elevated positions that other personnel couldn't or wouldn't access. She made shots at ranges from 1,600 to 2,300 meters, eliminating threats before they could engage friendly forces. Her reputation grew despite her preference for anonymity. SEALs who'd worked with her spread the word. There was a lone sniper operating in the mountains, a woman who could make impossible shots and who moved through terrain like a ghost. Some started calling her the Fog because she appeared from nowhere, eliminated threats with precision, and disappeared back into the mountains without explanation. The nickname amused her. It fit the way she operated. Invisible until the moment she was needed, then devastating in her efficiency, then gone before anyone could fully comprehend what had happened. 3 weeks into her deployment, Hadley received orders for her most challenging mission yet. Colonel Richards briefed her personally. "Sergeant, intelligence has identified an enemy commander who's been directing attacks against our forces for the past 6 months. He's responsible for at least 40 coalition deaths. He's careful, paranoid, constantly moving locations. But we've confirmed he'll be at a specific compound tomorrow at noon." "What's the challenge, sir?" "The compound is in a valley surrounded by enemy-controlled territory. Any conventional assault would result in significant casualties. Airstrikes aren't authorized due to potential civilian presence. But there's an elevated position approximately 2,800 meters from the compound." Hadley's eyes widened slightly. 2,800 meters was extreme even for her. "Sir, that's at the edge of my rifle's maximum effective range. I've never made a combat shot that long." "I know, but you're the only sniper I have who's even capable of attempting it. If you think the shot is possible, you're authorized to try. If you don't think you can make it, we'll find another solution." Hadley studied the imagery and topographical data. "Sir, 2,800 meters is possible in perfect conditions with perfect execution. I'd need extensive preparation time, detailed environmental data, and probably some luck. But yes, I believe I can make the shot." "Then you're authorized. You'll insert solo tomorrow morning, establish position, and engage the target when he appears at approximately 1200 hours. The next morning, Hadley was inserted alone via helicopter to a mountain position at 9,100 feet elevation. The landing zone was barely large enough for the helicopter to hover while she jumped out with her equipment. She had 6 hours to prepare for a shot that would either make history or teach her where her limits were. She established her firing position with obsessive attention to detail. She ranged the compound at multiple points: 2,784 meters, 2,791 meters, 2,806 meters. She would estimate the target at approximately 2,795 meters when he appeared. She spent 2 hours studying environmental conditions. Wind was the biggest variable. At 2,795 meters, her bullet would be in flight for approximately 4.3 seconds. During that time, even moderate wind would push the bullet over 10 feet laterally. She observed vegetation at various distances, estimating wind speed at 500-meter intervals along the bullet's flight path. She calculated temperature gradients from her elevation down to the valley. She accounted for the fact that she'd be shooting downward at a significant angle. The ballistic solution was complex: 78.4 MOA elevation adjustment, 13.2 MOA windage correction, with additional compensation for the downward angle and the thin air at her elevation. At 11:55 hours, figures began appearing in the compound courtyard. Through her scope at maximum magnification, they looked impossibly small, tiny shapes moving in an area that seemed microscopic at this distance. At 12:02 hours, the target appeared. Intelligence had provided photographs, and even at 2,795 meters through her scope, Hadley could identify him by his distinctive clothing and the way other figures deferred to him. She had one shot. Miss, and the target would disappear back into the compound, likely never to present this opportunity again. She settled into perfect shooting position. She rechecked her calculations one final time. She controlled her breathing until her heartbeat slowed to its minimum. Through her scope, she placed her crosshairs on the target with massive holdover. Her aim point was actually several feet above and to the right of where she wanted to hit, compensating for bullet drop and wind drift. She found her respiratory pause, that moment of perfect stillness between breaths. She began applying pressure to the trigger. The rifle fired. Through her scope, Hadley stayed perfectly still, watching for impact. At this distance, the bullet flight time was long enough that she could track where the round went. 4.3 seconds felt eternal. She watched the target area, hoping her calculations were correct, hoping the wind didn't shift during those critical seconds. Then she saw it. The target collapsed. Through her scope, she watched other figures in the courtyard scatter in panic and confusion. Their commander had simply dropped without warning. Hadley keyed her radio. "Granite Base, this is Overwatch 1. Target neutralized. One shot, confirmed hit at 2,795 meters. There was a long pause. Then Colonel Richards's voice came back. "Overwatch 1, confirm your last. Did you say 2,795 meters? "Affirmative, sir. 2,795 meters, one shot, target confirmed down. "Sergeant Mitchell, that's beyond anything I've ever heard of. Are you certain of the range?" "Range verified with laser rangefinder, sir. Multiple measurements confirmed 2,795 meters. "Then you just set a new record that I don't even have proper words. Extraction is inbound. Outstanding work doesn't begin to cover it." When Hadley returned to base, she was met by not just Colonel Richards, but by a 2-star general who'd flown in specifically to meet the sniper who'd made a 2,795-meter combat kill. Major General Patricia Stone looked at Hadley with an expression of someone witnessing something they didn't quite believe was possible. "Sergeant Mitchell, I've read your report. I've reviewed the imagery. I've confirmed the range measurement. You made a shot that's over 1.7 miles. That exceeds the previous record by several hundred meters. How is that even possible?" Hadley stood at attention. "Ma'am, it's possible because I've spent years training for extreme long-range shooting. I understand the mathematics of external ballistics at distances most people consider impossible. I know how to read environmental conditions accurately, and I execute the fundamentals with discipline that comes from thousands of hours of practice. But the variables at that distance, wind, temperature, elevation, target movement, any small miscalculation would result in a miss by several feet." "Yes, ma'am. That's why I spent 6 hours preparing. I measured every variable I could measure, calculated solutions for multiple scenarios, and waited for the moment when conditions were as close to perfect as they were going to get. Then I executed the shot I'd prepared for." General Stone shook her head in amazement. "Sergeant, you're being promoted to Sergeant First Class, effective immediately. You're also being awarded the Bronze Star with Valor for your actions over the past month. But more importantly, I want you to know that what you've accomplished has changed how we think about long-range precision fire. You've demonstrated capabilities we didn't know were possible." 3 days later, Hadley received new orders. She was being reassigned to a specialized unit that focused specifically on extreme long-range operations. Her job would be to train other snipers in advanced techniques, to push the boundaries of what was considered possible, and to execute missions that required capabilities no one else possessed. But before she left the theater, the SEAL team she'd supported requested one final meeting. Lieutenant Morrison and his team assembled at the base. Morrison spoke for all of them. "Sergeant Mitchell, we wanted to thank you personally. You appeared out of the fog when we needed you most, made shots we thought were impossible, and saved lives that would have been lost without your skill. We've worked with a lot of support elements in our careers, but we've never seen anyone operate like you do." Chief Carter added, "Ma'am, you've set a standard that the rest of us are going to spend our careers trying to reach. That 2,795-meter shot, that's legend status. But more than that, the way you operated alone in the mountains for weeks, the way you provided precision fire exactly when it was needed. That's the definition of professional excellence." Hadley looked at the 12 SEALs who'd been her teammates for a month. "Gentlemen, I appreciate the kind words, but the truth is simpler than you're making it. I have a specific skill set, extreme long-range shooting in difficult conditions. When situations develop that need that skill set, I apply it. No more complex than that. You make it sound simple, but we all know it's not, Morrison said. Most people can't do what you do. Hell, most snipers can't do what you do. Maybe. But I believe anyone with sufficient dedication could develop these capabilities. It requires discipline, practice, and a willingness to operate in conditions that are physically and mentally demanding. It's not magic, it's just work. One of the younger SEALs spoke up. "Ma'am, is it true they're calling you the Fog now?" Hadley smiled. "I've heard the nickname. It's somewhat appropriate. I do prefer to operate from concealment to appear when needed and disappear when the mission is complete, like fog rolling in and out of these mountains." "It's more than appropriate," Morrison said. "It's perfect. You're exactly like fog, invisible until you're right there, impossible to predict, and gone before anyone realizes what happened. Except, unlike fog, you're deadly precise." A week later, Hadley departed the theater. Her 30-day deployment had resulted in 43 confirmed enemy kills at ranges from 1,400 to 2,795 meters, supporting 8 separate special operations missions without losing a single friendly soldier to enemy fire. Her record-breaking 2,795-meter shot would be studied in sniper schools for decades. Her tactics for solo operations in extreme terrain would become training material for special operations forces worldwide. But Hadley's greatest contribution wasn't the records or the tactics. It was demonstrating that the limits people assumed for long-range shooting were actually just the limits of their imagination. With the right skills, the right equipment, and the right mindset, shots that seemed impossible were merely difficult. And difficult was exactly what Hadley Mitchell specialized in. The SEALs had whispered in frustration. "Enemies at 2,000 meters, we can't reach them." Then Hadley Mitchell stepped out of the fog that had concealed her mountain position for 3 days, grabbed her sniper rifle, and made those 2,000-meter shots look routine. Over the next month, she would eliminate 43 enemy fighters at ranges most snipers considered impossible, culminating in a 2,795-meter kill that set a record and proved that the only real limits in precision shooting are the ones we accept in our minds. Because sometimes the solution to an impossible problem is a quiet woman who's trained for years to specialize in exactly that kind of impossible. Thanks for watching. Every woman has a story worth telling. Join us to hear them all.